Hello everyone, welcome back to the GoVMlab Mastering VCF Real Enterprise Deployment Series episode number 2. In the previous lecture, we understood how modern infrastructure is evolving. We understood why traditional infrastructure models are starting to fail. So, in today's lecture, we will understand some of the key use cases of VCF. We will understand why enterprises are moving towards VCF. What are the key benefits and the capabilities are provided by VCF? Now, this lecture is extremely important, guys, because this is where you stop thinking like someone managing the tools and you start thinking like someone who is designing the systems. So, I would request everyone, don't just watch this lecture. Try to understand the architecture thinking behind VCF because that is what separates administrators from engineers and engineers from architects. So with that, let's begin and understand why enterprises are moving towards VMware Cloud Foundation. But before we get started, I am Neeraj Mantri. I am VMware and Cloud Security Architect with 19 years of experience in virtualization, data center, and cloud security solutions. So, with that, let's get started. So, we talked about in the previous lecture how modern infrastructure is evolving. And if you have not seen our previous episode number 2 of this particular series, I would request all the learners please go and watch out the episode number 1 of this particular series before you watch episode number 2. So now in the previous lecture, we understood that why traditional infrastructure models are no longer enough. We understood that enterprise infrastructure today is highly fragmented. We talked about the fragmented infrastructure, right? And this is where we discussed that workloads are distributed everywhere across data centers, across public cloud, across your edge locations, and there are multiple operational platforms. And we also discussed that this kind of distributed architecture creates a new set of challenges, such as complex environment, operational silos, manual dependencies, and unpredictable operations. And obviously, that naturally leads to one more important realization that enterprises today no longer need more disconnected tools. Today, enterprises need control on their infrastructure. They want control through consistency. They want control through automation. And they want control through a standard architecture. And that is where we talked about one single unified platform. That is what enterprises are looking forward. And that was the biggest takeaway from the lecture number 1, where we have discussed that infrastructure is fragmented and enterprise today need one platform. So now in this lecture, we take the next step towards our Mastering VCF series and understand how VMware Cloud Foundation actually delivers that unified cloud platform. We will understand some of the key use cases of VCF and key capabilities of this platform. So let's continue our journey from chaos to our architectural control. So now VMware Cloud Foundation, a unified cloud platform. So now that we understand that enterprises need a unified cloud platform, a unified infrastructure model. So let's understand what VMware Cloud Foundation actually is. right? And if you really see that, the keyword why I'm repeating again and again is about unification. You really need to understand that it's all about unification because VCF is not designed as isolated infrastructure component like your vSphere, like your NSX, like your vSAN. These are the powerful technology, powerful solution working as an independent product. But now the VCF bring them together as a one single unified cloud platform. And that's the reason I'm saying that VCF is not designed as an isolated infrastructure component. It is designed as a one integrated cloud platform. And now, if you look very closely, you will see that the VCF combines four major layers. And what are those layers we are having it? The first layer is compute, which is your vSphere. The second layer is your storage, which is your vSAN. The third layer is networking, which is your NSX. And then you have automation and operation coming into the picture, which is your entire ARIA suite and the other operation solutions coming into the picture. So if you really see that in VCF architecture, your vSphere is it at the foundation of compute. We have vSphere at the foundation of the compute layer of this VCF cloud platform. And vSphere, we all know, is where we run our virtual machines, where we run our workloads. This vSphere product provides enterprise grade compute virtualization. It provides you clustering, cluster management, high availability, vMotion kind of capabilities. And one of the very powerful flagship product what we have it and being using for decades. The next component of this platform and the next layer of this platform is your vSAN, which provides a software defined storage. Instead of depending completely on a traditional external SAN based infrastructure, your vSAN converts your local disk into a shared pool of resources and it gives you shared enterprise storage. That is what your vSAN is. Then the next comes is NSX, which handles your networking and security. This is where infrastructure becomes a software defined because this is our SDN solution. And this NSX enables virtual switching, virtual routing, virtual networking, microsegmentation, security policies, and in fact, it also enables the cloud-based networking. That's the power of NSX, one of the key component of this architecture. And last but not the least, we have automation and operation. Another, the most important layer, because modern infrastructure cannot scale if you do manual operations. With manual operations, we cannot scale our modern infrastructure. And that is where VCF, and that is where the VCF brings a life cycle management. It brings your automated deployments. It brings your consistent operations. And it most importantly, it gives you a centralized management. I hope everyone would have been aware of vCenter server, right? So vCenter server is actually used to provide a centralized management at the vSphere level, but now you can consider VCF as a much bigger level, where it gives you one centralized unified cloud platform and give you consistency with its centralized management. So now we all know as a VMware professional that every single technology right here in this particular slide mentioned vSphere, NSX, vSAN, ARIA, automation, operations, they are very powerful technologies. But the real power of VCF is not the individual products. I really wanted to iterate once again to clear those misconceptions that the real power of VCF is not the individual products. The real power of the VCF is the integration. VCF makes sure that everything works together as a one cloud platform. These powerful technologies should not be working in the silos anymore. These should be working together as a one cloud platform, and this is exactly what enterprises need today. They don't need disconnected tools. They need a one unified automated cloud operating model. And that's what VCF is all about. So if you really see, right, so now we understand what VMware Cloud Foundation actually is. But let's understand why enterprises are adopting it so aggressively. Because VCF is not just solving a technology problem. VCF is solving an operational problem. And if you really see, when I say VCF is solving an operational problem, let's try to go a little bit more deeper into it. Traditionally, if you see enterprise infrastructure evolved in silos, we used to have different teams, different tools, different architectures, different dashboards. One team is managing compute, maybe in your organization. You might be having a one team managing the vSphere. One team is managing network security. One team is managing storage. One team is managing just automation and operations. And that was the biggest challenge. That's where the enterprises end up with multiple tools. When we say multiple tools, what does that mean? Multiple tools means multiple platforms, multiple dashboards, multiple operating models, which increases complexity. And now, because we have such a complex architecture in fragmented infrastructure, we end up with heavily loaded manual operations. Most operations you will see will be still manual. Manual deployment, manual configuration, patching, upgrade, everything required a lot of human effort. So, a lot of human effort is required because of this complexity. Then the next challenge comes is the siloed across teams. And that is again a bigger challenge for the organization because vSphere team does not know what NSX team is doing. NSX team does not know what my storage team or vSAN team is doing it. vSAN team does not know what my ARIA team is doing it. And that is where the organizational silos become a next set of operational challenges. Infrastructure, every infrastructure team working independently, which again slow down your decision making. Troubleshooting becomes way more complex and deployments becomes more slower, right? And now the last but not the least challenge is the complexity and the cost. Because ultimately, infrastructure has become more complex. And complex infrastructure is difficult to scale. And it is very expensive to operate. And this is exactly the transformation VCF is designed to bring with VMware Cloud Foundation. With VMware Cloud Foundation, your entire infrastructure becomes unified. Now, what value VMware Cloud Foundation brings is instead of isolated products, now you have a one integrated cloud platform, one architecture, one operational model, one consistent experience. VCF give you automated operations. Your operations become automated now. Your deployment becomes way more faster. Your lifecycle management becomes completely automated and configuration becomes a consistent because of the automation in place. Upgrades, patches, everything is managed through a one standard automation framework. That's the value what VCF gives to the enterprises. And that's the reason we are keep saying that it is a unified cloud platform designed for the modern infrastructure. The third thing, very important thing, standard architecture. Today, the VCF gives you the architecture which is standardized. Enterprise can scale faster with lesser risk and predictable operations. Because now you have a one consistent architecture which can be replicated across the sites. And last but not the least, simple and efficient. The end result of unification, automation, standardization, that your infrastructure become way more simpler, way more faster, and way more secure and operationally efficient. And this is the real reason, guys, why enterprises are moving towards cloud operating model like VCF. Not because virtualization is new, but because manual infrastructure can no longer scale at the speed of enterprise operations. And that is where there's a huge shift is happening, where industry and enterprises are realizing the key benefit of VCF. Now, one more key benefit and the biggest operational challenges we all know in the enterprise infrastructure. We already talked about it, but I really wanted to reiterate and re-highlight this. One of the biggest operational challenge in enterprise infrastructure is the life cycle management. Because today also, if you see the deploying infrastructure is actually the easy part. It's a one-time effort where you are deploying the infrastructure. But the real challenge begins after deployment, when you have to do patching, when you have to do patching, when you have to do upgrades, when you have to maintain the consistency and making sure that even if the patching upgrades are happening, your environment is consistent, your environment is stable across compute, across storage, across networking and operation. It should not happen that upgrading your vSphere environment is breaking your network security operations. It should not happen that upgrading your NSX environment is breaking your ARIA automation and operations product, right? And traditionally, it has been a bigger challenge. As we already discussed, that these powerful technology was working in the silos, and every team is also working in the silos independently. And because of which these operations were handled manually. Different upgrade sequences, different compatibility checks, different maintenance window. Look at the pain, and I assume that every one of you working on VMware environment would have come across these challenges. And we all know that one small mistake could impact the entire production environment. And this is exactly the reason why enterprise always have a fear towards upgrades. Enterprises always try to avoid upgrade until unless it is very much mandatory, because infrastructure becomes difficult to maintain at scale. And this is where VMware Cloud Foundation changes everything. VCF introduced something called automated lifecycle management. It gives you automated lifecycle management where deployment is automated. VCF will automate your entire infrastructure deployment using standard architecture, using validated configurations, and making sure a consistent operational model. After deployment, then comes your patching. Instead of manually patching every component independently, VCF manages compatibility aware patching across the entire stack. So now it's a job of the VCF to make sure that your vSphere, your NSX, your vSAN, your automation operation components are being patched in a seamless way without any manual intervention. And that is the beauty of VCF, where it patches and manage your lifecycle management across the entire stack. And that was the biggest challenge in the traditional infrastructure. Then VCF automates your upgrade sequencing. It automates your validation, lifecycle coordination. And finally, when we talk about ongoing maintenance, operations become consistent because of this standard architecture, because of the automation what VCF gives you. So your operations become more consistent, more repeatable, and more predictable. And this is what the real power of VCF. This is the exact VCF is all about. This is the real power of VCF, that it is not just virtualization, not just cloud, but an operational automation at the scale of enterprise. Because enterprise today do not just need infrastructure. Enterprise today do not need just infrastructure. Enterprises today need reliable operations. They need an infrastructure that is automated, that is consistent, and most importantly, they need an infrastructure that is reliable. And that is why lifecycle management has become one of the most important reasons why enterprises adapt VCF. Now, I hope you guys are enjoying learning this VCF series with GoVMlab, and I assume that it making sense for you guys with this lecture series. And if you're really enjoying this lecture series, then we would request everyone to please subscribe to GoVMlab YouTube channel. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel and keep inspiring us to create more valuable content for our learner community. Because at GoVMlab, we don't just teach tools, we teach architecture. So now we understand that VCF is not just solving infrastructure deployment, it is solving your operational complexity, it is solving your lifecycle management, and it is also providing you consistency at this cloud scale operations. But now the question comes that why are enterprises investing so heavily in VCF? And I'll tell you again, the answer is not just technology. The answer, what you really need to understand as an enterprise engineer, as an enterprise architect, that it is not just about technology. The answer is operational transformation. Because enterprises today need infrastructure that is standardized, automated, and consistent. So, one of the major reasons, if you really see why enterprises are adopting VCF, is because of the standardization. Enterprises do not want, in fact, which enterprise would want a different architecture, different environment, and different operational model? Every enterprises want a one consistent operational model across public cloud, private cloud, edge infrastructure. And this is where VCF standardize the entire infrastructure stack. This is where the VCF standardize the entire infrastructure stack by providing you consistent standard architecture across the various environment. That's what the VCF gives you, a standard architecture. Then the next use case we talked about it is the automation. And we all know what automation brings for us, right? Manual operation cannot scale in modern enterprise environment. Enterprises, big enterprises today, in fact, every enterprises today need automated deployments. Who really want to go and spend weeks or months of time just to deploy the infrastructure? What if I have one template ready, I go and push that template and suddenly after in few hours, my infrastructure is ready. Everyone wants that. Every enterprise need automated deployments, automated lifecycle management, and automated operations to reduce operational overhead and increasing the efficiency. And if you really relate this particular point, look at the world where we did not have the concept of templates, concept of cloning. And if you have to build a VM, it used to be such a complex mechanism where every time, if I have to deploy 100 VMs, every time create a VM, install operating system, install required patches, application into that particular VM, and repeat that stuff for rest of the 99 VMs. That's a challenge. But today we streamline everything with the templates. One of the very basic example, I'm just trying to relate it. This is what industry need, what we have done at the template level. We want to do the same thing at the infrastructure level in a completely automated fashion to increase the operational efficiency. And this is one of the biggest strength of VCF. And last but not the least is another important thing is a consistency. Because enterprise infrastructure must be predictable. Operations must behave consistently. Who really wanted to have an infrastructure where your workloads are everywhere, but you do not have end-to-end visibility? You do not have a complete security policy in place. Who would really want to have a gaps in their security and then getting their entire infrastructure to be compromised? And that is the exact reason the enterprise need a consistent architecture, the consistent architecture, consistency in their security policies, in their operational model, in managing those frameworks, lifecycle operation. And most important thing, all these things should work in the same way everywhere. You can't come and say that, no, it's a public cloud, maybe certain vendor cloud solution, it does not work in the same way in your on-prem, because that is where the gap will happen. And that become a sweet spot for the attackers. So as a enterprise, we want a consistent architecture which can brings our risk down, which can give us a better governance and compliance and reduce risk, improve the governance, and also increase our operational confidence. And this is the real reason of VMware Cloud Foundation, a one platform with unlimited possibilities. Because the modern enterprises do not want disconnected infrastructure anymore. Modern enterprises today want a cloud operating platform that is scalable, that is secure, that is automated, and most importantly, that is operationally consistent. And understanding this is extremely important for every infrastructure engineer, because this is exactly how enterprise cloud platforms are being designed today. So now let's move on to the next slide. So we understand why enterprises are moving towards unified cloud platform. Why are enterprises investing so heavily in VCF? And we also discussed that the answer is not just technology. The answer is operational transformation, what VCF gives you. But the next question is that where exactly the VCF is used? What kind of real environment actually depend on VMware Cloud Foundation? And the answer is almost every modern enterprise infrastructure model. Because today, you need a platform like VCF because enterprise no longer operate inside a one fixed data center. Today, we discussed in the previous lecture also that today the infrastructure is fragmented. Your workloads are everywhere. Your workloads are on public cloud, private cloud, and they're running on edge locations also. Infrastructure is distributed now across public, private, multiple cloud providers. And then you have a modern application platforms like VMs, containers, Kubernetes, and your AI/ML workloads. So the very first major use case of VCF is the private cloud. Many enterprises still run critical workloads inside their own data centers, but they want cloud-like operating model for their own data center also. What do you mean by cloud-like operating model? The cloud-like operating model means they want automation, they want self-service, they want scalability, and they want lifecycle management. And that is where VCF help modernize the traditional data center infrastructure into a private cloud platform. The second major use case is a hybrid cloud. Today, most enterprises are not fully on premises and they are not fully public cloud either. In fact, most of the enterprises today operate across both the world. And that is where the VCF enables seamless, consistent architecture. VCF provides seamless extension to the public cloud. If you check out the solutions like VMware Cloud on AWS, Azure VMware Solution, Google Cloud VMware Engine, are classic example of this seamless extension to the public cloud. Because VCF enables this consistent infrastructure, between your private cloud and the public cloud environment. And that is the exact reason it makes movement of the workloads seamlessly. You can just migrate a VM from on-prem to cloud and cloud to on-prem with that same vMotion workflow. That's what VCF gives you. The next, multi-cloud operations. If you really see, large enterprises often work with multiple cloud providers, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and managing operations consistently across all these environments. That is a challenge because now the enterprises have workload distributed everywhere and they have to manage this operation consistently. But how do we do that? Because having a consistent operational model across these multiple cloud is the biggest challenge for the industry, and it becomes extremely difficult. And that is where VCF provides a standardized platform experience across this environment. And that is where VCF gives you one consistent platform everywhere, and it gives you a standard platform experience across these environments. So today, if you have a VMC on AWS on one side, Azure VMware solution on another side, Google Cloud VMware Engine on another side, and maybe fourth side, you have a traditional on-prem data center, you can migrate your VMs seamlessly because that is what VCF gives you, a consistent operational model. And the last but not the least, the platform for the developers today. Modern application platform, right? Today, your enterprises are no longer running only virtual machines. They are running containers. They are running Kubernetes, cloud native applications, AI ML workloads alongside your traditional workloads. And that is where VCF allow enterprises to run virtual machines and Kubernetes platform together on a one integrated infrastructure stack. So today, you don't need to have a different infrastructure on a one integrated infrastructure, which is VMware Cloud Foundation. VMware allows you to run not only virtual machine, but containers, Kubernetes as well. And that is where it is not designed for one environment only. It is designed as a universal cloud operating platform, no matter where your workloads run, whether it's private cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, Kubernetes platform. The enterprises want consistency, automation, security, and operational simplicity. And that is exactly what VCF delivers. So now we understood that VCF, this is not just virtualization anymore. This is not just a virtualization anymore. This is your cloud infrastructure. This is your cloud infrastructure because infrastructure today must behave like cloud. Your infrastructure today should be automated, scalable, consistent, secure, and lifecycle aware across every environment. And this is exactly why VMware Cloud Foundation becomes so important because it is not solving a virtualization problem. It is solving a cloud infrastructure problem, and that is the mindset shift every modern infrastructure engineer need to make. And that's what I want you guys to take from this particular slide. That is all about the mindset shift you need it, where you have to move out from virtualization and the vSphere product, and you have to think as a big cloud infrastructure platform today. So most engineers I have seen, and I think many of you would have seen, they focus only on the tools. Most engineers today or most administrators today, they focus only on the tools. How do I configure this? How do I deploy this? How do I troubleshoot this? While these skills are very important, I'm not denying it. Those skills are very important, but that alone does not create architects. Because architect thinks differently. Architect have to focus on systems, operations, scalability, automation, consistency, and business outcomes. Architect do not just ask how infrastructure works. Architect also ask, most importantly, why infrastructure is designed this way. And that is the biggest difference, guys. Where most of the people focusing on learning the n number of tools, where architect is focusing on that, not only learning the infrastructure, how it's working under the hood, but they're also figuring it out that why this infrastructure designed this way. And that is exactly why learning VCF is much bigger than learning VMware products. Because VCF teaches you how modern enterprise cloud platforms are architected. So I would say that stop thinking only about virtual machines now. I would say stop thinking only about virtual machine and start thinking about platforms. Start thinking about operations, automation, and cloud architecture. Because tools may change, tools will change, tools have changed, and tools may change. But architecture thinking creates a long term impact. And with that, now we have a strong foundation. So, with that, guys, we have completed episode number 2 of the Mastering VCF series with GoVMlab. And honestly, if you have been following us with these 2 lectures, I would say you have already built a very important foundation for VCF. Because before learning architecture, we first need to understand why infrastructure is changing, why enterprises are moving towards unified cloud platform. And I think this is what we do at the GoVMlab. When someone come and say that I want to learn vSphere, I want to learn NSX, it's not about let's go and deploy NSX. It's not about let's go and deploy vSphere product. You need to understand why. Why vSphere? Why NSX? Why vSAN? Why other solutions? Until unless you do not understand why, how would you go and learn it? So that is where we always believe into one thing, that you first need to understand why infrastructure is changing, why enterprises are moving towards unified cloud platform. Because if you do not understand those pain points of the enterprises, then how would you able to understand the true capabilities and value what VCF brings? So in this lecture, we explored why modern infrastructure, why in traditional infrastructure is changing, why modern infrastructure is looking for cloud scale operations, why enterprises need VCF not just as another tool, but as a complete cloud operating model. We also understood some of the real world use cases of VCF around private cloud, hybrid cloud, multi cloud, and Kubernetes environment. And finally, we understood that why enterprises choose VCF. I'll just write it down again. Why enterprise chooses VCF? Because of the standardization, because of the automation, and because of the consistency, what it gives you. That is the reason why enterprise chooses VCF for the operational consistency and lifecycle management. And this is the most important mindset shift, that VCF is not just virtualization. It is an enterprise cloud infrastructure, and learning VCF means learning how modern enterprise platforms are architected. So now in the next lecture, we will go a little bit more deeper. We will understand the actual VCF architecture. What are the core component of the VCF, like vSphere, vSAN, NSX, and most importantly, SDDC manager. So we will understand how all these components actually work together as a one integrated cloud platform. So that is the difference, guys, between learning the products and learning architecture. Because at GoVMlab, we don't just teach tools, we teach architecture. And if you are serious about building real enterprise cloud expertise, then make sure you subscribe to our GoVMlab YouTube channel and continue this VCF journey with us. Because this series is designed to help you think beyond administration and start thinking like an enterprise architect. So thank you for watching once again, and I'll see you guys in the lecture number 3, where we go inside the VCF architecture. Thank you once again.